My friend, I just wanted to do a quick screen share and talk a little bit about printing from Canva, setting up a file that is ready to go to a commercial printer using Canva. I had never set up a print file from Canva. I typically use Adobe software and have a certain process for preparing a print document for production. So I have never attempted that process using Canva, and I was curious to see if there were any limitations or whatnot in the process. When you're printing something, like let's say you want to print a tarot deck. I have a deck of cards here that is kind of a standard size for a tarot deck, and it has the same design on the back of every single card, but then the front of every card is different. And this deck has got 68 different cards, and then it also has a booklet, pretty big booklet. So that's usually printed separate. It's a different file that you'd have to set up to print. If you're creating some sort of instruction book to go with your card deck, most decks you're going to have, like I said, unique design on each of the front sides. So each of the fronts will be a totally different design, a different file, or different page within your file. And then usually there will be one back that will be the same. Now, this particular deck has got a pretty thick cardstock, and it also has a gloss coating. It also has rounded edges. So all of these things are usually add-ons or extra line items in your invoice. When you're printing something, all of these things will usually cost extra. So if you want to get a gloss finish, if you want to have rounded corners, if you want a thicker stock, all of those will affect the pricing. The other thing that affects the pricing is how many unique designs. So if you have a 32 card deck or a 20 card deck or a 100 card deck, the number of cards in your deck will make a difference. And then obviously how many total decks you print. So you'll have, let's say, a 68 cards, unique prints. And then if you want to print 100 decks, you may get a price break at each 100 that you spend will probably reduce the cost per deck. All right, I'm going to jump over to Canva and just show you how you would set up a print file. The main point that I want to get across in this video is, like, for example, this card design, the color goes all the way to the edge on both sides of the design. So you can see the artwork on this side of all of the cards, and the back side, it goes all the way to the edge. So you have to set up your print file with something called bleed. So printers don't actually print to the edge of a page. You have to set up your page that's slightly bigger than the size you want it to be in the final produced printed item. So if this is 3.5 by 4.75 card, or whatever the size is, you would set it up with a little extra. Usually the standard is 0.125 inches all the way around, or 0.13 inches around extra space of bleed around your document, and that gets trimmed off. So when you set up your file size, you've got your document size set to this size, plus that extra bit around the outer perimeter of your document, and that gets trimmed off. So you have your crop mark set to the edge of the document. That extra bleed gets trimmed off, and it looks like your color then goes all the way to the edge. So you want to make sure that your image is pulled out beyond the edge of the document on both sides. So you'll have to, in Canva, set up your bleed so that extra color can be trimmed off so that it seems like your color goes all the way to the edge. Go ahead and jump over to Canva really quick. I have too many tabs open. There it is. There we go. So I had already set this up using an AI image. I went to auraprint.com, their standard card deck. They specialize in a custom tarot card printing. Their standard size is 2.5 by 3.5, which is smaller than my little sample here. This size here would be more like a regular playing card size card. But regardless of the size, when you go to Canva, I go ahead and create a new design. I'll start from scratch. I'm going to set up a custom size. I'm going to use, I'll use inches for this example. So I'm going to change millimeters to inches. And I want it to be 2.5 by 3.5. So 2.5 by 3.5 inches. Go ahead and create that. I'm going to come back. I'm going to have the little AI assistant draw. I think we'll just leave it like that. So presumably you would have your own artwork or images that you would bring in to Canva. Maybe you just want one big image in the background or a solid block of color or some text. Go ahead and have AI. You may be creating art in a different software like Procreate or another app that you're using to create artwork. When you place your artwork in from wherever, from your camera roll or from another software that you've used, I've just placed this AI document. You can see it is quite a bit smaller than my document size. So keep in mind that anytime you scale up, anytime you make something larger, you're losing resolution. So you want to get the biggest file size that you can. So ideally you would have to make it smaller instead of making it bigger. If you're making something smaller, it's not going to impact the print quality of that image. But if you have to stretch an image and make it bigger, unless it's a vector-based image, which for the most part, unless you're working with a professional designer or you are a designer and you're working in a vector-based software, 9 times out of 10, if you're placing an image in Canva from another piece of software, it's probably a raster-based image. So it's like a photograph. And when you make those raster images bigger, the resolution decreases as the size increases. So as I'm making this image bigger to fill in my space, I want to make it big enough to where it fills the whole background. I've definitely reduced the resolution of this image as I made it bigger. And it can help to print this on your own first before you send it to your printer, just to make sure that the quality is going to work okay. If it's just a background image, maybe it won't matter that much. Maybe you want to, not stretch it as much. Maybe you want to just keep it like this and then put just a solid block of color behind it. In that case, that block of color would be sized to the full resolution and would look fine, but you could keep this smaller in your layout so that you don't impact the resolution. But if you want to scale it so that it fills the whole background, I wouldn't make it any bigger than it has to be. Just make it just big enough to fill that background. Now you can see right now I've pulled it out to the edge of my document. If I were to just leave it at this, probably what I would get at the printer would probably reduce this to fit. And so you would end up getting a white border around the edge rather than having the bleed set up. So I'm going to go into File, Settings, Show Print Bleed. And now you can see that I've got this extra gap on the top and bottom where the color's not beyond the edge of the document. So I want to just make sure that I pull bleed all the way to the edge, holding down Shift so it doesn't scale my image in a weird wonky way. But now you can see that the image goes beyond the document size all the way to the edge of the bleed. And now when the commercial printer prints this document, let's see, when we share it, we want to make sure download for print, we're always going to select PDFs. We're going to include the crop marks and bleed. Because I have the free account with Canva, I can only export as RGB, which is really only good for websites and social media. If that's the case, I would probably just turn off the crop marks, export for RGB. To export for printers, you're going to want to make sure it's CMYK. If you have a free Canva, you could go ahead and export just the RGB. And let's see, go ahead and PDF print. I'm going to include the crop marks. I'm going to leave it as RGB for now and just download it. Just preparing the PDF. I'm going to go ahead and open that so you can see these crop marks show the edge of the document. Here and here, all of this would be trimmed off. Go ahead and just put that in the downloads folder. Hopefully that helps. You can see there's still more document here that's shown, but that's beyond the crop marks. All of that would get trimmed off in production. So it would get trimmed. And obviously if you added something like rounded corners, the die line that they use to cut this would be rounded instead of square. But the default for most printers, unless you specify that you want rounded corners, it will just get trimmed square. All right, I hope this helps you set up your print document using Canva. Reach out if I can answer any specific questions, but hopefully this was helpful. Take care. Much love. More soon.